Welcome to Stuck in My Mind podcast, the show where we dive into the mind of a regular guy on his road to self-discovery. You'll hear everyday people just like you share the latest topics, personal stories, and things they've learned along the way. And now, please welcome your host, WIZE.
And welcome to another episode. I am your host, WIZE. I have a special guest on today. He's a fellow podcaster. I actually met him on another podcast. He was a co-host. He was a co-guest with me as well. And I just felt that I would love to have him on the show. So welcome to the show, Marvin Storm. Hey, Marvin.
Hey, it's great to be here again with you. Excited about our chat today.
Yes. That's what mine. It was like was the open table I forgot the name of the show, but it was a pretty good show. It was me, you, Chris Voss. I actually had forgot her name. I just had her on my show. I just recorded an episode with her earlier. She actually recorded. She was a guest on the show as well. So it's been cool. Now I've had all three of you on my show except for the host, which I will be working on getting her on soon.
Well, you've had a lot of great guests on and had a lot of great chats. I've looked over all the guests you've had, and you have a good cadre of people that you've interviewed.
Yeah, and it ranges from all types. I've had celebrities, authors. I've had regular people, professionals. It's just been amazing. Just the fact that I've been able to speak to so many different people and have some great conversations and learn a lot of things along the way. So,
well, I'm looking forward to our chat here today. So let's get rolling.
All right. So tell us a little something about your podcast.
Well, the podcast is called Business Exit Stories. I interview deal makers that make transitions for entrepreneurs out of their business. They facilitate those processes. These are business brokers, CPAs, wealth managers, investment bankers, all of these folks that are involved in helping entrepreneurs monetize all their hard work and, sometimes that lasts years and decades to be able to turn that hard work into a really great exit when they step away and sell their business. So there's a lot of great stories, good stories that turn out really well and people hit a home run and get that transfer into their bank account of a lot of cash, and some stories that don't end so well, where people drop the ball on the last lap of running their business and they thought they were going to have a great exit, but things didn't work out that way. And each of these stories comes with a great takeaway, something that people have done right, and those things that people have done wrong that caused a less than optimal exit for those type of individuals. So it's a great, entertaining podcast.
Yeah, no, when we were on the other show, you had told us a couple of stories. You had mentioned one which was a success and one which was a failure. And one of the cases, I guess the company held on to their business a little bit too long and ended up closing the business when they had an opportunity to sell it, and they just didn't. And then I guess the other one, it was the complete opposite. They decided to hold on to their business and it actually built itself up even more.
Yeah, it just depends on the situations. It's not uncommon for entrepreneurs who are these eternal optimists that always believe that tomorrow is a better day. Sometimes it is, and sometimes the exits turn out well because the individuals are able to execute at a pretty high level, and it turns out well for them. And and there are situations when timing is right and people should sell, but they don't. And when they hang on too long, sometimes that window of opportunity disappears. And it really doesn't have to. The people that think through and plan their exits tend to have better outcomes than those that wait to the last minute and decide, well, I think I need to sell my business tomorrow. And they call up someone to help them do that. And uh, when you wait to the last minute, the exits generally aren't that great.
Cool, cool. So, how many people have you interviewed? Like,
Oh, I have hundreds of stories on my podcast. Every guest that comes on the podcast comes with four transactional stories, two stories that go well, and the takeaways to those, and then two transactions that didn't go great, and why. And so every podcast has kind of the Reader's Digest version of four different stories, and they last 10 minutes, 12 minutes per story. And you get a flavor of the type of business it was, who the entrepreneurs that built these businesses and what their motivation for selling was, and some of the dynamics around how the transaction unfolded. And it's really in the details of the how the transaction unfolded that it's all the insights and the learning that can be taken away from these stories. I've had a lot of people, you know, give me feedback after listening to an episode. They'll say, I that business was just like me. That guy sounded like me, and I don't want to make the same mistakes he does. And really, that's the purpose of the podcast, is to uh, allow people to learn from others' mistakes or learn from others' ability to do the right things, and so that they can copy those things, and so they don't have to miss out by trying to figure it out themselves. They can learn from the experiences of others, both the good experiences and kind of what to avoid, where the landmines are buried sometimes. And just for that, if I've had several businesses in my career, and that's really why I got started in the podcast, is because I had these exits and every one of them was different. And I was never really quite 100% ready and I didn't have everything figured out. And I went through this process figuring out as I went along. And I thought, after I stepped away from my business the last time, I thought, if I had known what I didn't know, I could have probably have done better for myself. And that's when I got to thinking about, if I could share those type of insights with people like myself that were getting ready to sell their business, that would be something I could really give back. And so that's what I started the podcast for. And it's just been a delightful journey. Again, as I started to mention, if I had had a podcast like the Business Exit Stories podcast when I was getting ready to sell my business, I would have thought differently. I would have done different things. I would have been better prepared when the time came to pull the trigger, to walk away or step away and sell my business. I would have been miles further down the road. And it's just been very gratifying to be able to create a platform where that type of information is shared and shared freely by those that have been through it.
and that's sort of like why I do my podcast, is because someone might hear one of the stories that someone tells on my podcast and be like you said, that's me. That was me. That was I was in that rut, or I don't want to make that same mistake, or wow, I was in that place. Like, me and a friend of mine, me and a high school friend of mine, we did an episode together. He's killing it right now in the New York State real estate game. He's killing it in Brooklyn, and we just spoke about what we were doing in our lives to have the outcome that we wanted. And we talk about manifestation and setting goals, and definitely reading and learning, and just all the things that we were doing to impact the outcome to what we wanted. And we had a mutual friend that was listening to the episode, who, after she listened to the episode, sent me a message and said, listening to you guys talk about everything you guys are doing and getting accomplished and everything inspired me to, 'cause she had been on the fence about wanting to start her own business. And hearing two people that she knew personally growing up talk about having their own business and the things that we were doing inspired her to take the leap and start her business. And a year later, she's very successful. She's doing very well, and it's just amazing that, and that's why I do my podcast. Is if someone out there is listening and they listen to something that we put out there and it helps them, then I feel like I did what I was supposed to do.
Well, I think that's one of the real gratifying things, that you have a platform that can inspire people, that can provide insight, that can give individuals that are, kind of on the fence of what they're going to do with their career, their life, either personally or from a business perspective, and being able to provide these insights that give people the motivation to change things that they're doing that can make their lives and the lives of their family better. That's very, very gratifying. In my case, what I have learned doing the podcast is that uh, entrepreneurs are this special breed of people. They, start a business sometimes from scratch. They work long hours, sometimes 5, 6, 7 days a week, for years, and they create something special. It not only provides the business they've created, not only provides a vehicle for them to provide for themselves and their family, but if they have employees, it's a vehicle for their employees to provide a living for them and their families and for their customers. And, it's this very gratifying thing to have started or buy a business and build it up, and entrepreneurs become really good at what they do. You mentioned your friend in the Brooklyn real estate market. Well, he's obviously figured it out. He's obviously become an expert in what he's doing, and he's able to convert that expertise into building a business and creating a lot of cash flow for himself and income for himself. And people that build a business like that, they become really good at what they do, experts at what they do. But when it comes time, uh, that you want to either move on to something else or retire or uh, to have a lifestyle change, that you don't want to work so hard, whatever the circumstances are, and you think about selling your business, well, you haven't done that before, even though that you know what you do really, really well. But when it comes to this new thing that you have to figure out, and that is selling your business, s- as I mentioned earlier, sometimes, at least in my case, I didn't know what I didn't know. And sometimes the mistakes I made in that process of selling the business, I hadn't done it before, and so I didn't really know the methodology or the techniques to be able to execute at a high level there, and consequently, I wasn't able to optimize all that hard work to convert those years of hard work and all of my knowledge and expertise into the highest exit value. And that's what I found very gratifying, because the stories that are shared on the podcast are stories about how people have made those mistakes, have figured it out. And by just listening to the podcast, there's an enormous amount of insights that are shared. So you don't have to figure it out. You don't have to make the mistakes all yourself. And I think that's uh, the gratification of what you do, the gratification of what I'm finding, is to be able to share those type of insights for people that have worked so hard, these entrepreneurs, and have started their business from scratch and they're growing it. One of the things that I've noticed, a question that I get all the time is, why am I thinking, or why would I want to think about selling my business today? I'm not going to sell it for 5 years, 10 years down the road? Why would I want to think about doing that today? And it's a great question. And my answer to that type of question is it isn't necessarily that you're going to spend a lot of time actually working on positioning your business for a sale years down the road. But it's a thought process. It's a state of mind. It's how you think about things. And I could give you a lot of examples, or stories shared on the podcast of how just knowing or thinking about your exit forces you into thinking differently about decisions that you make today that will have a really big impact down the road. And I'll just give you one example. This was just on the podcast a month or two ago, where an individual had a retail store, had started it 25, 30 years ago. And it became in the area that he was operated his store, it became kind of a landmark. It was a touristy type of area. People came to that area, always wanted to go to this store. Uh, per square foot, sales per square foot in that store were really high. I mean, Apple stores have the highest per square foot sales of any retail store on the planet. They weren't quite at the Apple level, but they were pretty close of the amount of sales they generated per square foot. And it was a phenomenal business, great margins, high quality product, a lot of goodwill they'd created, but there was a health issue. And the founder, said that he was going to eventually have to step away from his business because of just health issues and concerns. And so he retained a business broker that worked with him to position his business for sale. And a couple of years before, this health scare came up, he was negotiating a lease for his location. Now, obviously, it's a retail store, so the lease is very important to him. It was a key asset for the value of that business. And the landlord was a personal friend and had given him a favorable lease, 25 years before. And every 5 years, the lease would come up for renewal. And they were friends, so they never reviewed the lease. There was a little bit of a rent increase every year, and just sort of went through. So a few years before he decided to sell the business, the lease came up for renewal, and he did the same thing that he had done always. He just signed the new lease and never thought about it. Well, when it came time to sell the business, the buyer on the other side's attorney looked at the lease and saw that there was no transferable clause, no ability to assign the lease to the new owner.
Oh.
And what that created was that when the business sold, the new owner had to sign a new lease, which may or may not be a big problem, but in this case, it turned out to be a huge deal because the retail rents that were in the lease were about 3 times under market value. So that means if you're renting something for $1 a foot, the real market value is $3 a foot.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference. And now this business was being sold for 5 times net profit. So that meant, if the business was being sold, for a couple of $1 million and the rent was $100,000 and the rent went up from $100,000 to $300,000, that $200,000 increase in rent caused the net profit to drop $200,000. And if you're selling for a 5 times multiple, 5 times $200,000 is $1 million. That decreased the value of the business by $1 million. And so what I talk about, thinking in advance about what what the future is going to look like when you sell your business. If he would have thought about that and negotiated, I'm sure there wouldn't have been a problem to negotiate an assignable feature to that lease to the new buyer or a new owner. It would have probably just been a routine, 10, 15-minute discussion and a little bit of drafting to include that in the lease. And it wouldn't have been a big deal, but it became a huge deal that cost him a whole bunch of money when it came time to
Mm.
sell his business. And so that's what I mean. It's about the thought process. It's not that you have to work on getting your business ready for sale when you're not even thinking about it, but it's thinking about those things that may have an impact if and when that time comes. I already know that people listen to that episode have given me feedback that they went and got out their lease and looked at it based on that story. And so that's the purpose. And so it's more of the thought process. So
Awesome. That's awesome, man. That's definitely great. Um, what made you feel like, because like you were an entrepreneur, and what made you like, hey, I'm gonna make a podcast where people can discuss exiting the businesses that they own.
well, the last exit, the last time I sold my last business, I thought I would just, take it easy. It's kind of every entrepreneur's dream to have the time to do things that you want to do with your life, and that's what I thought I was going to do. And so I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area. Uh, I lived in a home that I had 5 kids, and they're all grown and gone, and so we decided to downsize our living situation. We moved up to the country on the way up to Lake Tahoe. For those of you that are familiar with Northern California, it's what is called the gold country, where they discovered gold back in the 1840s and 50s. Pretty rural area, rolling hills, a lot of oak trees, a little bit different lifestyle than living in a large metro area like the San Francisco Bay Area. And, life in the slow lane was fun for a while, you know, but once you are an entrepreneur and you've had the pedal to the metal for so many years, life in the slow lane, when you move over from, the left lane over to the right lane and you're in a slow lane, it's actually kind of boring. And so that's why I got to thinking, of all the experiences I've had in my business career and the several businesses that I've exited, I got to thinking about each of those exits and how I could have probably done better. And because I love podcasting, I listen to all sorts of podcasts every day. Uh, and I have my playlist that I listen to when I'm exercising or out and doing things. And I thought, I think I'm going to do a podcast. And, I think there are probably a lot of other people like me out there, and that
Yeah, no,
need a little insight. That's why I
that's how
got started.
that's how I started. I was like, I would listen to podcasts. I would listen to some podcasts and be like, man, that sounds cool. That sounds like something I want to do. And me and my friend were going to start a sports and entertainment podcast. And then life happened. He got him and his wife had a baby, so he was out of the picture, and it was just me. And one day I just decided to press record and ranted on about whatever was going on at the time, and that's what started the podcast. And little by little, it was at first me talking about work and politics, and I didn't really enjoy it that much. I had fun record. I knew that I enjoyed recording and wanted to do the podcast, but I had to find something that made that I wanted to just put out positive content. I just wanted to put something out there that would help people. So I started going around. At first, a bunch of guests would ghost me. They would like completely ignore me. Just like first question they would ask is what's your numbers? How many listeners do you have or whatever? And they would just ghost me and ignore me. And then little by little, as I built up my listeners, my listenings, and my followers and all that, people started reaching out to me to be on the podcast, and I was like, wow. And then I just started linking up in all these groups and sending out invites to a lot of different people, and it just started taking off and growing, and to the point where now I have so many recordings that I need to get out, because I just, within the past 2 months, I just converted my podcast to video as well. I was just simply audio, and within the past 2 months, all the episodes I've been recording have been audio and video. But I have so
So how has the video worked out for you?
many audio that I need to get those. It's doing pretty good. I've within, because like I said, I just started doing it the last 2 months, and my subscribers are up to almost 700. So I'm excited.
Oh, that's cool. That's amazing how YouTube and video is kind of taking over the world.
But I'm realizing that YouTube, like a lot of the video, because a lot of videos I look up on YouTube are things I want to know, like especially when it comes to video editing and audio editing, and just it's just me seeking things that are helping me in podcasting and helping me build what I'm doing. So yeah, I love YouTube. All right, so now it's time for you to let everybody know where they can find you, and all your social media websites. Just plug away. This is the time where you just promote yourself.
Well, I think that if you're an entrepreneur out there, I don't care if you're just getting started in a business or if you've been doing it for years. The podcast, the Business Exit Stories podcast, can be gotten wherever you get your podcasts from: Apple, Google Podcasts, or Stitcher, Spotify, wherever. And just listen to the stories. Not only are they stories on, positioning your business for an exit, they're actual stories of how to scale and grow a business as well, because that's what you're in business for. You don't want to spend all these years in the business and then not be able to monetize it. I also have a free uh, PDF download booklet form that talks about how to double the value and the amount of money that you put into your pocket when you sell the business. And it gives you some real insights into what you need to be thinking about and doing to put a lot more money into that bank account once you do sell your business. And you just go to businessexitstories.com/report, and you'll be able to just download it. And it's a quick read, but it does give you a lot of interesting insights. So you can reach out to me at M. Storm at businessexitstories.com if you have any questions about how to position your business for an exit or anything like that. But what I'd really recommend is that you just start listening to the podcast, because you get so many interesting insights. Any entrepreneur that is building a business should listen to it. If I had that, I would have done a lot better when it came time to sell my businesses, and that's really the purpose of why I was doing it in the first place. So it's been a real exciting thing for me to do and to share.
Yeah, I agree with you with that. Like, I love the fact that I get to do my podcast, and I didn't know I would enjoy it so much. I didn't know I would love it so much, but I do. It's giving me a voice, is giving me something to express myself and be able to learn so much, to be able to speak to people like yourself and learn and be able to hear your stories and hear how people they have their ups and their downs, and then to hear about how they were able to lift themselves up, that just inspires me to continue to grind and put out more content.
Well, I've enjoyed the discussion here. It's been a real delight. I just get passionate about talking about this. So for all your audience out there, I just take a listen to my podcast and continue listening to this one, because I know the type of guests that have been brought on here are going to be of value to you in the future. So I have listened to a lot of the podcasts that you've done, and I find them really intriguing, and the type of guests that you've been able to get on.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that. I really do. It's always great to hear another fellow podcaster's opinion on what you're doing, because everybody, I'm proud of the work I do, and I try to do the best work that I can. I'm still growing and developing. I'm still learning. So
we all are.
Episode,
That's part of the if you're an entrepreneur, you're always learning and developing. That's the great thing about entrepreneurs. Class is always
so with each
full.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Entrepreneurs are always learning and developing. But it's been great. I appreciate you being on the show. This has been a blast. Don't leave just yet. After my shout outs, we'll chat a little bit off there. But now it is time for shout outs. Big shout out to my real WIZE fam, Brandy J, Poppy J. Love you guys. We got some big things coming up, so I'm excited. Big shout out to the boss lady, Fina. Love you, baby. Appreciate everything you do for me. And as always, a big shout out to the essential workers out there. God bless you. Be safe. You know how your boy WIZE does it. Peace out.
Thanks for listening. Listen on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, and TuneIn. Find us on social media on Twitter at @WIZE_B_blunt, Instagram at @WIZE_B_blunt, and a Facebook fan page, www.facebook/WIZE76. Check back soon for new episodes. Until next time, peace out.